Save big during Labor Day at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, buy more to get up to an additional 20% off. Shop even more savings with 3 Stay Green 1 cubic foot vegetable and flower garden soil bags for $10. This Labor Day, take care of your home for less at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. Select locations only. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
Before we begin, do you have a theory about this case or a story of your own? Leave a message on our socials. Our handles are all just Nightwatch Files without the space, or head over to nightwatchfiles.com to find them all in one place. Your insights might be featured in a future episode. I'm Harper Finley, and this is Nightwatch Files. On the evening of December 27, 2011, Russ Faria drove through the light snow falling on Lincoln County, Missouri. He had just left his weekly game night with friends, stopping at an Arby's drive-thru for a late dinner before heading home to Troy. His wife Betsy was battling terminal breast cancer, and the chemotherapy treatments often left her exhausted. When he tried calling to let her know he was on his way, she didn't answer. Nothing unusual if she had fallen asleep after her treatment earlier that day. Russ parked in the driveway around 9:45 p.m. and entered through the unlocked front door, dropping a bag of dog food and removing his jacket. As he glanced into the living room, he made a discovery that would change his life forever. Betsy lay sprawled on the floor in front of the sofa, a pool of blood beneath her head. She was on her right side, her face covered in blood, with the black handle of a kitchen knife protruding from the left side of her neck. Her right forearm bore a deep gash, and her arms were crossed in front of her in a contorted pose. When Deputy Chris Hollingsworth arrived 9 minutes after Russ's frantic 911 call, he immediately recognized they were dealing with a murder. The paramedics found Betsy's body cold and stiff, with rigor mortis already setting in, and blood that was coagulating and drying. The physical evidence at the scene would suggest that Betsy Faria had been dead for hours, not minutes. Yet within days, investigators would arrest her husband for her murder, convinced he had killed her in the brief moments between arriving home and calling for help. But there was something else about December 27, 2011, that investigators initially overlooked, something that had happened just 4 days earlier. A single piece of paperwork that would raise questions about who really wanted Betsy Faria dead. And there was someone else who had been with Betsy that evening. Someone whose story would change multiple times. Someone who stood to gain from Betsy's death in ways that wouldn't become clear until it was almost too late. What really happened in those final hours of Betsy Faria's life? And why would the investigation that followed lead to one of the most shocking wrongful convictions in Missouri's history? Russell Scott Faria grew up in Florissant, Missouri, a middle-class community on the northern edge of St. Louis. During 6th and 7th grade, he spent a year in Florida, where his father worked as a construction laborer and painter. After returning to Missouri, Russ struggled academically and dropped out of Hazelwood Central High School in 1987. 2 years later, he earned his GED from a local technical school. In his younger years, Russ was known for having a volatile temper. A high school classmate recalled him getting into a fistfight over a girl. He worked various jobs, including maintenance for a major grocery chain, and spent 10 years managing a liquor store. Meanwhile, Elizabeth K. Carter, known as Betsy, grew up in the St. Louis suburbs as the third of 4 daughters in a devoutly Roman Catholic family. During her school years, she excelled as a softball pitcher and was part of state championship teams in 1984 and 1985. As a high school senior, she launched her own DJ business called Party Starters, which showcased her extroverted personality and love of music. After graduation, Betsy studied broadcasting and secured work as a DJ at a country music station in the Florida Keys. While there, she began a long-term relationship that would result in two daughters, Leah and Mariah Day, born in 1990 and 1994. The relationship ended when her partner returned to Florida after their second daughter's birth, maintaining minimal contact with his children thereafter. Betsy returned to Missouri and briefly married Ron Carter in 1995, though they divorced within a year. Despite the failed marriage, she maintained a friendship with Ron and continued intimate relations with him approximately every 2 weeks. In 1997, 28-year-old Russ stopped for gas at a service station in O'Fallon, Missouri. Behind the cash register worked 29-year-old Betsy, still finalizing her divorce from Ron Carter. Russ was immediately struck by her appearance, her curly brown hair with blonde highlights, sparkling blue eyes, and radiant smile that reflected her bubbly, extroverted personality. He began making regular visits to the station, engaging in flirtatious conversation. Eventually, Betsy asked him out. Their romance developed quickly. Russ grew attached to Betsy's two young daughters, ages 7 and 3, and moved into her mobile home in O'Fallon. They married in January 2000 after her divorce was finalized. The early years of their marriage proved turbulent. The couple engaged in frequent, loud arguments, though there was never any physical violence. Russ's volatile temper would lead to angry words he later regretted, while Betsy battled depression for years and had been prescribed the antidepressant Celexa by at least 2006. Betsy's infidelity became a recurring issue. She maintained her sexual relationship with ex-husband Ron Carter, visiting him when upset with Russ or seeking what she called a release. Around 2005, during one of their separations, she also had an affair with her sister Mary Rogers' husband. Mary indicated that she did not take the news well and was, quote, pretty darn angry. She also mentioned having a few unkind words for her husband, although at that time they were already split up. In January 2005, tensions escalated when Mary intervened during a verbal altercation at their mobile home. Mary later claimed she heard Russ threaten to cut her up and put her in a bag, though police reports indicated the argument centered on household responsibilities. The couple separated multiple times, including one period lasting about a year when Russ stayed with a friend in southwestern Illinois. Despite these difficulties, they repeatedly attempted reconciliation. They sought counseling at Morning Star United Methodist Church in Wentzville, where pastoral guidance significantly improved their relationship. During this period, Betsy worked for an insurance company and continued operating party starters, with Russ often assisting at events. In October 2001, she met Pam Hupp on Pam's first day at the insurance office. Betsy had taken out a life insurance policy that same year, maintaining Russ as the primary beneficiary despite their marital troubles. Encouraged by Betsy, Russ pursued higher education, earning associate's and bachelor's degrees in information technology. This led to a significant career advancement when he secured a position in IT technical support for Enterprise Holdings in 2007. By the decade's end, those close to the couple observed improvements in their relationship. Mary Rogers noted that Russ and Betsy had worked through their problems and genuinely loved each other, commenting that Russ had come a long way and changed his behavior significantly. However, Betsy's mental health struggles persisted. She was hospitalized for psychiatric issues in 2008 and again in 2010 after making suicidal statements to a police officer. Throughout this period, Pam Hupp consistently portrayed Betsy's marriage as deeply troubled, claiming Betsy frequently spoke of leaving Russ and describing him as verbally abusive and degrading. In late 2009, Betsy received devastating news. She had been diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent a mastectomy and reconstructive surgery in 2010, and by early 2011, the cancer appeared to be in remission. The diagnosis and treatment created what would be described as the worst challenge of their lives, profoundly impacting their finances and daily routines. In October 2011, while attending a family wedding in Rhode Island, the cancer returned with a vengeance. Betsy's doctor delivered a grim prognosis. The cancer had spread to her liver, was inoperable, and she likely had only 3 to 5 years to live. According to Pam Hupp, Russ insisted on knowing the full extent of the prognosis, which distressed Betsy. Despite the devastating news, Betsy and Russ decided to proceed with their planned 7-day cruise to Belize, Honduras, and Cozumel in November 2011, reframing it as a celebration of life. The couple was joined by friends and family, and those who accompanied them observed their closeness during the trip. Linda Hartman, a friend who went on the cruise, recalled Betsy saying she was really happy with Russ and noted the couple appeared to be honeymooning. Rhonda Graham, who knew the Farias from church, characterized their relationship as having a stronger bond after Betsy got sick. For Betsy, swimming with dolphins became one of the highlights of her life. She appeared determined to beat cancer again, maintaining her generally positive nature despite the circumstances. Just after her cancer recurred, but before the cruise, Betsy made comments to Linda Hartman about her life insurance, stating she was okay with dying because she was leaving the insurance money to Russ and her 2 daughters to be split 3 ways. The cancer and chemotherapy treatments took a severe toll on both Betsy's health and their finances. She became too ill to work at the insurance company and qualified for disability payments from Social Security. She continued operating her part-time DJ service, Party Starters, spending most weekdays making calls for the business from home. The chemotherapy was debilitating and painful, sapping her energy and lowering her white blood cell count. She had also begun wetting the bed, which allegedly angered Russ. Betsy's mental health history remained a concern throughout her cancer battle. She had been taking the antidepressant Celexa for at least 5 years and had a documented history of suicidal threats. After her first cancer diagnosis, her daughter Mariah had found a suicide note. During one previous separation from Russ, she had told Pam Hupp, I just feel like killing myself. I can't do this anymore." However, Pam also noted Betsy's fluctuating moods, observing that she can be down in the dumps and an hour later be flying high, and didn't believe she had ever actually attempted suicide. As 2011 drew to a close, Betsy began making what she described as unspecified preparations for the future and for the care of her daughters after she was gone. She maintained several life insurance policies totaling between $300,000 and $400,000, with Russ as the primary beneficiary. Her family stated she wanted the money split equally among Russ and her 2 daughters. She was also making plans for a cruise with her younger daughter Mariah the following March. The holiday season brought mixed emotions. From December 19th to 22nd, Betsy enjoyed a girls' weekend to Branson, Missouri, with her close friend Linda Hartman and Linda's daughter Ashley Frost. On Christmas Eve, she and Russ engaged in holiday activities with both their families. She also spoke with her ex-husband Ron Carter by phone and seemed upbeat and not at all depressed. Christmas Day saw the couple spending time together, participating in holiday activities with both families. Russ gave Betsy a jewelry armoire as a Christmas gift, though it had a broken leg and needed to be propped against the bedroom wall. Russ's family noted Betsy's positive attitude despite her terminal diagnosis, and she and Russ discussed taking Mariah on vacation to Florida in March 2012. On December 26th, the day after Christmas, Betsy stayed at her mother Janet Meyer's apartment in Lake St. Louis to be closer to her chemotherapy appointment scheduled for the following day in St. Peter's. That evening, Russ's cousin Mary Anderson saw the couple at a family Christmas party, observing them as happy and laughing. However, at another Christmas party hosted by Betsy's sister Pamela Welker, Betsy appeared unusually reserved and tired, which was attributed to feeling down from the cancer treatments. Around 5 p.m., Russ called his mother Lucy Faria to inform her he would miss family dinner due to errands. Quick break. Ads keep the show running, but if you want to skip them, the ad-free version's on Patreon for just $3 a month. Links in the show notes.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Lowe's knows that no matter your paint project, saving is at the top of your list. That's why when you shop today, you can buy one, get one free select Valspar and HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams one-coat coverage interior paints via rebate. Shop these deals in-store or online today at Lowe's. We help, you save. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Offer valid 8/21 through 9/3.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking through that. Let's get back to it. December 27th, 2011 began like many other days in the Faria household. Betsy had spent the night at her mother Janet Meyer's apartment in Lake St. Louis to be closer to her chemotherapy appointment scheduled for 1:30 p.m. at the Siteman Cancer Center in St. Peters. Russ was working from his home office in the basement, providing IT support remotely. The couple exchanged a series of text messages throughout the morning, coordinating their evening plans. At 10:35 a.m., Betsy texted Russ, "You were supposed to get dog food, tonight." He replied 6 minutes later, "Yeah, I will get it when I come in." When Betsy asked if he had his weekly game night, Russ confirmed at 12 p.m., "Yeah, going to game and then we'll come get you. We'll call on the way, should not be too late." Betsy responded warmly, "Okay, great, honey." Earlier that morning, Betsy had texted her friend Pam Hupp at 10:35 a.m., telling her that Bobby Wan would take her to chemotherapy instead, as she wanted one-on-one time with Bobby. Despite this change, Pam decided to join them anyway, driving to Janet's apartment around the time Betsy was scheduled to leave. Finding that Betsy had already departed with Bobby, Pam chatted with Janet before leaving. After her chemotherapy session, Betsy's plans changed. At 3:46 p.m., she texted Russ, "I got toilet paper, and Pam Hupp wants to bring me home to bed. I need rest. White blood cell count is low, but got chemotherapy anyway." Russ confirmed the new arrangement, and Betsy replied at 3:52 p.m. Yes, she offered, and I accepted. Shortly after 5 p.m., Betsy called Russ to confirm that Pam would drive her home and mentioned she had good news to share with him later. Pam returned to Janet's apartment around 5:15 p.m. to collect Betsy, waiting while she finished playing a board game with her mother and Bobby. At approximately 6 p.m., Russ arrived at his friend Mike Corbin's house for their weekly game night. He joined Mike Corbin, Angelia Julian, Brandon Sweeney, and Marshall Bach for what would be 3 uninterrupted hours of movies and conversation. The group watched Conan the Barbarian and The Road, sharing some marijuana but consuming no alcohol. Friends later described Russ as appearing completely normal, even dozing off at one point during the evening. Meanwhile, Pam and Betsy left Janet's apartment after 6 p.m. Pam later claimed she called her husband Mark from Betsy's driveway at 7:04 p.m., leaving a voicemail to which Betsy also added holiday greetings. The two women went inside the house, where Pam said she turned on the hall, living room, and kitchen lights because Betsy didn't like to be alone and was calling for Russ. Betsy showed Pam the jewelry armoire Russ had given her for Christmas, which had a broken leg and was propped against the bedroom wall. Betsy tried to convince Pam to stay the night or watch movies, but Pam refused, stating she didn't want to be around when Russ returned home. After what Pam described as 20-30 minutes or so inside the house, she left and called Betsy's phone at 7:27 p.m., claiming she was almost home or home free, to assure Betsy she was okay with driving at night. During this time, Betsy's daughter Leah Day had called her mother's phone at 7 p.m. to ask her to answer a call later from the phone store. Leah subsequently called 3 more times from a U.S. cellular store at 7:21 p.m., 7:26 p.m., and 7:30 p.m., but Betsy did not answer any of these calls. Between 8 and 8:30 p.m., while Russ was still at game night, his phone rang once with his Imperial March ringtone from an unknown number, but he didn't answer. At 8:52 p.m., Pam called Betsy's mother Janet because Betsy wasn't answering her phone. Pam told Janet she was worried Betsy was mad at her for not staying until Russ got home. 5 minutes later, at 8:57 p.m., Janet called Russ's phone, leaving a voicemail. The game night group decided to call it an evening about halfway through the road, departing at 9 o'clock into a light snow. Russ drove only a few minutes before pulling into an Arby's drive-thru in Lake St. Louis at 9:09 p.m., ordering 2 junior cheddar melt roast beef sandwiches. He ate the sandwiches and drank iced tea during his drive home to Troy. When he tried calling Betsy to let her know he was on his way, she didn't answer, which he found normal if she was asleep after chemotherapy. Russ parked in the driveway around 9:45 p.m. He entered through the unlocked front door, dropped the bag of dog food, and removed his jacket. As he glanced into the living room, he discovered Betsy's body sprawled on the floor in front of the sofa in a contorted pose, with a pool of blood under her head. Betsy was lying on her right side, wearing a black t-shirt, blue workout pants, and green and white socks. Her face was covered in blood. Her arms were crossed in front of her, and there was a deep gash on her right forearm. The black handle of a kitchen steak knife protruded from the left side of her neck, just below the jawline and above a grisly slash. Her eyes were closed and her tongue was protruding. In his shock and seeing the slashed arm, Russ initially thought Betsy had committed suicide. He recalled her past suicidal threats and hospitalizations, including an incident where she had threatened to harm herself with a knife during an argument. He started to cradle her but stopped, realizing he shouldn't disturb the scene for police. Staggering to the kitchen landline, he dialed 911 at 9:40 p.m., collapsing to the floor while hysterical and sobbing. Deputy Chris Hollingsworth from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office arrived at 9:49 p.m. Upon seeing Betsy's body, he immediately recognized this was not a suicide but a murder. He escorted Russ to the front porch to avoid contaminating the scene. Russ shivered uncontrollably in the frigid air, wearing only a t-shirt and jeans, and was given a white blanket. Hollingsworth noted Russ's erratic breathing and panic, though he also observed that Russ appeared calm at times and even laughed while discussing his childhood. Captain Robert Schramek of the Fire Protection District arrived moments after Hollingsworth and was the first official to examine Betsy's body. He found it cold and stiff, with rigor mortis already setting in, suggesting death had occurred 2 to 4 hours earlier. The blood under her head appeared cold and coagulating. Paramedic Mike Quattrocchi arrived at 9:51 p.m. and made similar observations, noting the body was cold, stiff, and the blood was drying, indicating Betsy had been dead for some time. The crime scene was quickly secured, and investigators began their methodical examination. They took hundreds of photographs and collected evidence throughout the house. The bloody carpet under Betsy's head and sofa upholstery were removed. A second knife, similar to the one in Betsy's neck but without blood, was found under a sofa pillow. A suspected dog paw print was discovered on Betsy's left rear hip on her pants. In Russ's bedroom closet, investigators found a pair of tan men's house slippers, size 11, with smudges of what appeared to be dried blood. They also collected his black Harley-Davidson leather jacket and black leather gloves. Electronic devices were seized, including 2 cell phones, 4 laptops and computers, hard drives, an iPod, MP3 players, CDs, and a camera. In Russ's Ford Explorer, they found the Arby's bag with the receipt time-stamped 9:09 p.m. from Tuesday, December 27th, along with 2 bottles of iced tea and a carton of cigarettes. Russ was transported to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office in Troy, where his interrogation began at 10:30 p.m. in interview room 2. Wrapped in a blanket and appearing pale, he constantly whispered, "No, no, no," and "Why?" Detective Mike Merkel observed Russ's behavior when alone, noting he seemed to bury his face in his hands and sob, later slamming his head against the wall and falling to his knees in prayer. However, Merkel's report noted that Russ did not appear to have any moisture on his face or arms where he may have been crying. During the interrogation, Russ described his and Betsy's lives, their marital history, including past separations and recent improvements through church counseling, Betsy's cancer diagnosis, and his activities that day. He explained finding Betsy's body, his initial thought of suicide, and his deliberate decision not to touch her to preserve the crime scene, which surprised Merkel. Eventually, Merkel suggested to Russ that the truth of Betsy's final hours was between you and Pam, right? At 3:52 a.m. on December 28th, Detectives Ray Floyd and Keith Ryder of the Major Case Squad took over the questioning. Russ stated that he and Betsy had sex on Christmas night, 2 days before her death, and he noticed no new injuries. He confirmed his alibi and mentioned his life insurance policies totaling $300,000 or more, with him as the primary beneficiary. At 5:30 a.m., after 7 hours of questioning, Floyd asked Russ to write a statement, which he did. DNA samples were taken from Russ at 8:30 a.m., with swabs of his hands and feet collected at 9:49 a.m. At 11:20 a.m., Floyd informed Russ that Betsy's death was not a suicide but a murder. Russ was read his Miranda rights and signed a waiver, though he felt he wasn't free to leave. The autopsy began at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, December 28th, led by Dr. Kamal D. Sabarwal. The examination revealed that Betsy Faria had been stabbed 55 times. The wounds included 10 to the neck, injuries to the thyroid gland, trachea, and right jugular vein, with the knife penetrating 5.5 inches deep. Numerous stab wounds and slashes were found on her neck, face, head, arms, shoulders, chest, back, and abdomen. The cause of death was determined to be stab wounds to the neck, chest, and abdomen. Blood tests showed a low level of diphenhydramine, commonly known as Benadryl. Rigor mortis was severe in her jaw and limbs. That afternoon, Russ was taken to the Lake St. Louis police station for a polygraph test administered by Detective Gary McIntyre at 1:55 p.m. When asked if he killed Betsy, if he killed her with a knife, and if he knew who killed her, Russ answered no to all questions. McIntyre told Russ he was not 100% honest and accused him of stabbing Betsy. Russ was beyond horrified and repeatedly insisted, "No, I did not. I wasn't even there." McIntyre suggested he could help if Russ confessed, portraying him as either somebody who lost it, made a mistake and is remorseful, or some kind of fucking monster. Detective Floyd joined the interrogation, claiming there was no way Betsy was dead when Russ got home and stating, "She was alive when you got home. She was dead by the time the police got there." The detectives introduced allegations about a prior incident where Russ allegedly held a pillow over Betsy's face and said, "This is what dying feels like." Russ was flabbergasted and denied the claim, questioning where such an absurd allegation came from. Floyd stated, "You only have one person with a motive, money," and claimed the polygraph showed 100% deception. The detectives estimated Russ got home around 9:30 to 9:35 p.m. and made the 911 call at 9:40 p.m., suggesting he killed Betsy in a 10 to 15 minute time frame. Floyd claimed Betsy hadn't been dead hardly at all when the police got there, less than an hour, contradicting the initial observations of first responders. He also alleged the crime scene had been cleaned and that there was blood on Russ's slippers and a bedroom light switch plate. Russ repeatedly denied involvement and maintained his alibi. At 4:36 p.m., he finally requested a lawyer. He was then arrested and handcuffed, with Floyd heard saying, "As soon as they want a lawyer, that means they're guilty." While Russ was being interrogated, detectives were also conducting interviews with others connected to the case. At 6:40 a.m. on December 28th, Detective Stephanie Kaiser and Sergeant Perry Smith arrived at Pam Hupp's door in O'Fallon. Pam provided a nearly 3-hour recorded interview, offering insights into what she described as Betsy's fatally troubled marriage with Russ. Pam claimed Betsy talked often about leaving Russ and that she and friend Linda Hartman had discussed moving to Branson. She recounted taking Betsy home, saying they arrived between 7 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. and admitted to going into the house, turning on lights, and staying for 10 to 20 minutes. Pam increasingly built a case against Russ, alleging Betsy was afraid of him and tired of his talk about her insurance money. Pam also mentioned Betsy's P.Doc letter, which was found by Detective Robert O'Neill, who conducted a thorough search of Betsy's laptop computer and made mention of this policy change. Deep within the hard drive, he discovered a document that was titled simply P.Doc. The metadata associated with the document revealed specific details about its creation. According to the computer records, the letter had been opened using Betsy's profile and password on December 22, 2011, just 5 days before her murder. The timestamps indicated it was written in approximately 15 minutes, between 11:55 a.m. and 12:10 p.m. that day. After completion, the document was immediately saved to the hard drive and then reopened again at 2:10 p.m. Prior to the letter's creation, the computer showed evidence of someone searching for stationery templates. The phrase "Love Betsy" had been typed 3 times in different fonts, as if the author was experimenting with various formats before settling on the final version. The letter was addressed to Pam and contained disturbing allegations about Russ Faria's behavior toward his terminally ill wife. The document described Betsy's fear that Russ is going to do something to me. It detailed an incident where Russ had allegedly become angry that Betsy came home instead of staying at her mother's house and claimed he had been reading her emails. According to the letter, Russ had made threatening comments, telling Betsy, "He said I won't be around much longer, so what do I care?" The document alleged that for months, Russ had been talking about how much money he would make after I die, and that he preferred when Betsy stayed at her mother's residence rather than at home. Perhaps most disturbing was the letter's description of a specific incident where Betsy claimed to have woke up to Russ holding a pillow over my face. The letter stated that during this alleged encounter, Russ had said that he wanted me to know what dying feels like. The document went on to explain Betsy's supposed plan to change her life insurance policy without Russ's knowledge. In the letter, she asked Pam, "Do you think I could put it in your name and you could help my daughters when they need it?" The reasoning given was that her daughters would blow it if they received the money directly. The letter concluded with Betsy expressing fear about staying alone with Russ and Troy and making a specific request to Pam to please show this to the police if something happens to me. During her interview, Pam made statements that suggested she knew specific details about the timing of Betsy's death, saying something happened to her last night when talking to her brother, and later asking detectives if Betsy's death happened this morning. She consented to a search of her cell phone, provided a DNA sample, and gave police the clothes she wore the previous night. Detective Kaiser noted no noticeable marks or injuries on Pam. Other family members were also interviewed throughout the day. Detectives informed Betsy's older daughter Leah Day and sister Julie Swaney of the death at 7:20 a.m. Leah criticized Russ's behavior, saying he would sometimes get angry over financial issues and yell at Betsy, making her afraid. Mariah Day spoke of her mother's depression and a past suicide note, but thought Betsy was handling her new diagnosis well and seemed happy over Christmas. Betsy's sister Mary Rogers recounted the 2005 incident where Russ allegedly threatened to cut her up and put her in a bag during an argument. She confirmed Betsy had cheated on Russ multiple times, but maintained they loved each other very much and that Russ had changed. Members of Russ's family, including his mother Lucy Faria and sister Rachel Faria, noted Betsy's positive attitude despite her cancer and confirmed that Russ and Betsy had discussed a future vacation with Mariah. Rachel mentioned that Betsy had once threatened suicide with a knife, which Russ had taken away from her. Quick break. Ads keep the show running, but if you want to skip them, the ad-free version's on Patreon for just $3 a month. Links in the show notes.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking through that. Let's get back to it. On January 4th, 2012 at 3:30 p.m., Russ Faria was arrested for his wife's murder after Sergeant Ryan McCarrick filed a probable cause statement with Lincoln County Prosecuting Attorney Leah Askey. The statement provided grounds to file charges of first-degree murder and armed criminal action against Russ. Following his arrest, he was fingerprinted, photographed, and dressed in a prisoner's uniform. From jail, he was able to call his mother and his cousin, Mary Anderson. That same evening at 9:30 p.m., Mary Anderson called defense attorney Joel Schwartz, asking him to represent her cousin on the murder charge. Schwartz agreed to take the case after meeting with Mary Anderson the following day. On January 5th, Betsy Faria's life insurance agent, Kathy Peterson, received an angry and threatening phone call from someone claiming to be Russ Faria's sister, inquiring about Betsy's life insurance. Peterson immediately contacted police about the call. Following Russ's arrest, media coverage intensified. Sheriff Mike Krigbaum announced to cameras that they had arrested the right person and possessed sufficient evidence. Prosecuting attorney Leah Askey stated publicly that they knew Betsy had come home, laid down, and was likely resting or asleep when the incident occurred. She also attacked Russ's alibi, asserting it had unraveled, and led authorities to believe the murder was premeditated. On January 25, 2012, Pam Hupp provided a letter from her doctor, Dr. Ronald L. Fisher, stating that she was unable to undergo a polygraph due to her medical condition. This letter followed a handwritten note she had sent to Dr. Fisher requesting such a statement. Russ's trial was initially scheduled for June 26, 2012, before Lincoln County Circuit Judge Dan Dildane. On June 25th, the day before the scheduled trial, Sergeant Ryan McCarrick interviewed Pam Hupp to hammer out discrepancies in her statements and prepare her as a witness. During this interview, Pam made a notable comment, casually stating that if she really wanted money, her mother was worth $500,000 that I get when she dies, implying it would be an easier way to obtain money than by killing Betsy, who she described as physically stronger. When directly asked by McCarrick if she had anything to do with Betsy's murder, Pam responded, "No, absolutely not." During the summer of 2012, attorney David Butch filed a lawsuit against Pam Hupp on behalf of Betsy Faria's daughters to recover the $150,000 from Betsy's life insurance policy. 2 weeks after his June interview with Pam Hupp, McCarrick filed a report concluding that Pam attributed documented memory loss due to a head injury as the reason for any subtle differences or discrepancies in her statements. On September 11, 2012, a hearing was held on Joel Schwartz's motion to reduce Russ Faria's bond. Judge Dildane reduced the $1 million cash bond to $25,000, though Russ remained in jail as he was unable to meet even the reduced amount. During this hearing, Schwartz overheard Askey refer to him as the biggest asshole defense lawyer she had encountered. The case progressed slowly through the summer of 2012, with Russ's trial eventually rescheduled for November 2013. In March 2013, Joel Schwartz conducted crucial depositions that would reveal significant inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. On March 18th, he deposed Janet Meyer, Betsy's mother, who stated her belief that Pam Hupp was money-hungry, but not the killer. She firmly believed Russ killed Betsy in a crime of passion, attributing the 55 stab wounds to betrayal over the insurance policy. She indicated that Sergeant McCarrick had told her that Russ came home after he played the games and took care of business. On March 19th, Schwartz deposed Sergeant Ryan McCarrick, who was described as very defensive and hostile during questioning. McCarrick acknowledged that first responders had reported Betsy's body as being cold and stiff upon their arrival, stating that if a body was cold and stiff, it usually means that somebody's been dead for a couple hours at least. However, he maintained his belief that Russ got home sometime around 9:30-ish or so, and then murdered his wife before calling 911. McCarrick admitted that some of the facts he cited in the probable cause statement, such as Russ putting a pillow over Betsy's face and Betsy writing an unfindable letter to Pam, came solely from Pam Hupp. He confirmed that Pam was the sole recipient of the $150,000 from the beneficiary change just 4 days before the murder, and was the only person known to be alone with Betsy 2 hours before her confirmed time of death. He conceded that not one of the 104 leads investigated had confirmed Pam Hupp's whereabouts after she left the Faria house. On March 20th, Schwartz deposed Pam Hupp herself. She made an unsolicited declaration that, "I did not kill Betsy," and denied sending her doctor a note requesting him to state she could not take a polygraph for medical reasons, despite Schwartz possessing a copy of the note. She asserted that Betsy had asked her for a ride home, contradicting text messages that showed Pam had offered. She confirmed she entered Betsy's house after calling her husband at 7:04 p.m. and remained there for 20 minutes or even longer. Pam admitted to initially telling police she never went in the house, then changing her story to say she did. She offered new excuses for her contradictions, attributing them to memory problems stemming from menopause and being 55 years old. She admitted she had not created the trust fund for Betsy's daughters until the week before Russ's trial in November 2013, despite telling McCarrick she would set it up by July 2012. During the deposition, she mentioned that her mother had died of Alzheimer's on October 31st, 2013. Russ Faria's trial began on November 18th, 2013, with opening statements from both sides. Prosecuting attorney Leah Askey immediately attacked Russ's initial assumption that Betsy had committed suicide, declaring, "Folks, this is a murder about greed." Despite objections from Schwartz, Judge Menemeyer allowed Askey to discuss the insurance policies as a motive. She characterized Russ as having a short temper, being abusive to the family dog, and suggested he had orchestrated a plan for game night to facilitate the murder. She sarcastically highlighted Russ's stops during his alibi, using the phrase, "got a receipt, got on video." Defense attorney Joel Schwartz framed the event as a tragedy for both families and for Russ, who found his brutally murdered wife. He emphasized Russ's normal day and the crucial change where Pam Hupp drove Betsy home. He attempted to introduce Pam Hupp's inconsistent statements and cell phone location data to suggest her involvement, but Judge Menemeyer prohibited this, ruling that he could not imply Pam committed this crime or even discuss her contradictory statements because they were not relevant. Schwartz then focused on the testimony of first responders who would describe Betsy's body as stiff, cold, and with blood that was matted, coagulated, and drying, suggesting a time of death 2 to 3 hours before Russ's 911 call. He highlighted the absence of blood on Russ despite the 55 stab wounds and suggested the bloody slippers could have been a deliberate attempt to frame him. The first day's witnesses included Betsy's daughters, Mariah and Leah Day, who testified about frequent arguing between their mother and stepfather. Mariah became visibly emotional when asked about her fear of Russ influencing her living arrangements. Later, outside the jury's presence, Mariah testified that she had withdrawn approximately $9,000 from Russ and Betsy's joint bank account without Russ's permission after his arrest. Other family members testified on the first day, including Betsy's sisters Pamela Welker and Mary Rogers. Welker described Russ as condescending, while Rogers recounted the 2005 incident where Russ allegedly threatened to cut her up and put her in a bag. Russ's mother, Lucy Faria, confirmed that Russ had called to say he wouldn't attend family dinner due to errands, though she clarified this was common, happening half the time. On November 19th, the second day of trial, Pam Hupp took the stand as the prosecution's key witness. She described Russ as degrading and claimed he made Betsy feel simple and not that smart. She confirmed her earlier statement to police, "I don't know him that well. I've only met him maybe 3 times in 10 years. She reiterated that Betsy had asked her for a ride home and affirmed she had entered Betsy's house after calling her husband at 7:04 p.m., staying for 20 minutes or even longer. She confirmed Betsy had shown her the jewelry chest in the bedroom and stated she had received $150,000 from the insurance policy, depositing $100,000 in a trust for the girls, and using $50,000 to help another friend's daughter. Other key witnesses on the second day included Officer Chris Hollingsworth, who testified that after moving Russ to a patrol car for warmth, they talked and laughed for about an hour, having normal conversation. Lead medic Michael Quattrocchi confirmed Betsy's body was cold and stiff with dried blood upon his arrival, estimating she had been dead a couple hours. He noted that the cut on Betsy's arm had no blood in it, suggesting she had bled out before it was inflicted. The third day, November 20th, brought more crucial testimony. Lieutenant Mark Schimweg explained how the major case squad operated and confirmed that while Russ's alibi witnesses were interviewed multiple times, Pam Hupp's whereabouts were not similarly investigated. Crime scene technician Amy Pratt testified about evidence collection, though during a court break, after conferring with prosecutors, she changed her testimony regarding testing on what appeared to be a paw print on Betsy's pants. Dr. Kamal Sabarwal, the medical examiner, described the 55 stab wounds Betsy suffered. He explained the concept of cadaveric spasm, but admitted there was no test for it, and he couldn't confirm it had happened to Betsy. He agreed that cadaveric spasm wouldn't account for body cooling or blood drying, and stated he expected more blood at the scene and on the assailant given the nature of the wounds if Betsy had been alive when they were inflicted. Detective Mike Merkel testified about his investigation and described Russ's demeanor as erratic, displaying overwhelming emotion at times, and then appearing completely emotionless. He confirmed that Russ believed Betsy had killed herself and agreed that Russ was wearing the same clothes in surveillance video as when arrested. Major Ray Floyd testified that Russ was interrogated for approximately 12 hours and acknowledged that Russ had been awake for 36 hours when interviewed. Critical evidence was presented regarding DNA and blood evidence. Daniel Fonestock from the crime lab testified that blood on Russ's right slipper was Betsy's, with odds of 1 in 178 quadrillion of being anyone else. The DNA inside the slipper was Russ's, with odds of 1 in 978 billion of being anyone else. He described the blood on the slippers as droplets, not smears. Blood on the master bedroom light switch plate was predominantly Betsy's, with an unidentifiable male contributor. Janet Meyer, Betsy's mother, testified that it was unusual for Russ not to return her calls. She referred to Pam Hupp as a money-grubbing, not a nice word, but changed her previous testimony, now insisting Pam told her she did go into the house, contradicting police reports of her initial statement. On November 21st, the final day of trial, closing arguments revealed the stark differences in how each side viewed the case. Leah Askey presented a theory that Russ's game night was the ultimate role play, the ultimate game, implying his friends were co-conspirators in a murder plot. She suggested Russ had orchestrated the entire evening to establish an alibi, grotesquely theorizing that he had sex with Betsy and then killed her while naked with a kitchen knife, hoping it would look like suicide. Askey accused Brandon Sweeney of being an active co-conspirator, claiming he went to Arby's and brought Russ his phone to help cover up the murder. She suggested that the semen found in Betsy's body was from forced sex just before her death and claimed that multiple officials had judged him as guilty based on his behavior. Joel Schwartz immediately attacked Askey's argument as a shameful fiction, accusing her of implicating 4 innocent people in murder without one shred of evidence. He countered with proof of Russ's alibi, including videos, receipts, and cell phone records, emphasizing the complete absence of blood on Russ and the implausibility of the prosecution's naked killer theory. In her rebuttal, Askey continued to attack the alibi, suggesting Russ could have left his phone at game night while he went home to kill Betsy. She made a statement that there isn't any evidence that points anywhere else, violating a court order, though the statement was stricken after objection. After just over 2 hours of deliberation following lunch, the jury returned with their verdict. Russ Faria was found guilty on all counts. Jurors later revealed the initial vote was 6-6, but those voting for acquittal were convinced to change their votes. They found Askey's timeline more logical and believed the crime scene had been cleaned. Crucially, they were unaware that evidence regarding Pam Hupp becoming Betsy's beneficiary had been suppressed by the judge. Joel Schwartz immediately expressed outrage and vowed to appeal, asserting, "This isn't over." He sent a text to Askey calling her closing argument irresponsible and unethical, and stating that an innocent man was convicted. Mary Anderson began reaching out to Dateline NBC to cover Russ's case. On December 13, 2013, Schwartz filed a comprehensive 11-page motion for judgment of acquittal or a new trial, detailing 11 points of error by Judge Mennemeyer or misconduct by Leah Askey. The motion explicitly stated the defense believed Pam Hupp was Betsy's killer. On December 23, 2013, Russ Faria was formally sentenced to life in prison without parole. Betsy's sister Julie Swaney read a victim impact statement, accusing Russ of planning and executing the murder out of anger over the insurance changes. Askey responded to Schwartz's criticisms by attacking him personally, while Judge Mennemeyer denied the motion for acquittal or a new trial. Following the verdict, anonymous callers began contacting Schwartz, asserting that Pam Hupp had lied under oath about her mother's death. Schwartz then learned through the Post-Dispatch article from November 1, 2013, that Pam's mother, Shirley Newman, had died on October 31, 2013, from injuries sustained in a fall from her third-floor balcony, with Pam being the last person to see her alive. This directly contradicted Pam's testimony that her mother had died of Alzheimer's, revealing yet another inconsistency in her statements. Quick break. Ads keep the show running, but if you want to skip them, the ad-free version's on Patreon for just $3 a month. Links in the show notes. And we're back. Thanks for sticking through that. Let's get back to it. In 2014, the Betsy Faria murder case gained national attention when Dateline NBC aired The House on Sumac Drive on March 14th. This marked the first televised national coverage of the case, featuring an interview with Russ Faria from prison where he maintained his innocence. The broadcast would become the initial installment of what would eventually be Dateline's most extensive series on a single case. Meanwhile, significant developments were unfolding in the civil litigation surrounding Betsy's life insurance money. On July 21, 2014, attorney David Butch, representing Betsy's daughters Leah and Mariah Day in their lawsuit against Pam Hupp, deposed Pam regarding the $150,000 insurance payout. During this deposition, Pam made several damaging admissions that would prove crucial to Russ's appeal. Pam testified that shortly after Russ's conviction in November 2013, she had revoked the trust fund she had established for Leah and Mariah and withdrawn all but $300 of the $100,000 she had deposited. She stated she had transferred the money into her personal checking account, which she shared with her husband, using it to pay bills and invest in real estate. Butch believed there was evidence that she had used some of the insurance funds to purchase a new house around this time. Most significantly, Pam admitted that she had initially opened the trust only due to pressure from Sergeant Ryan McCarrick and implied pressure from prosecuting attorney Leah Askey. McCarrick had explicitly told her that setting up a trust for the girls would make the murder case against Russ look better at trial. Joel Schwartz viewed this information as dynamite, as it contradicted Pam's earlier statements about Betsy's wishes for the money and strongly suggested greed as her primary motive, implicating her as a prime suspect in Betsy's murder. In November 2014, St. Louis County Police re-reviewed their investigation into the death of Shirley Newman, Pam Hupp's mother. This review was prompted by an anonymous note informing them that Pam had been investigated in Betsy Faria's murder. Shirley had died on October 31, 2013, from a fall from her third-floor balcony, with Pam being the last person to see her alive. On December 1, 2014, Joel Schwartz filed a 70-page appeal for Russ Faria to the Court of Appeals for the Eastern District of Missouri. The appeal incorporated the newly discovered evidence from Pam's deposition testimony regarding the trust fund, its revocation, and the pressure she faced from law enforcement to establish it. Schwartz argued that this information, if presented to the jury, could have led to Russ's acquittal. During preparation of the appeal, Schwartz's associate Hannah Zhao discovered a crucial legal precedent in State of Missouri v. Mooney. This case established that an appellate court possessed the inherent right to remand a case to the trial court for a new trial if evidence discovered post-trial could have resulted in an acquittal, even if standard time limits for new trial motions had expired. On February 4, 2015, Schwartz filed the rare Mooney motion with the Court of Appeals, arguing that the newly discovered evidence about Pam's admissions and the alleged pressure from McCarrick and Askey warranted a new trial. The motion contended that this evidence could have resulted in Russ's acquittal. In an unusually swift response, approximately 20 days after the filing, Chief Appellate Judge Angela T. Quigless ordered Russ's case sent back to the trial court to decide if he should receive a new trial. She acted without even waiting for a response from the prosecution, citing the court's inherent power to prevent a miscarriage of justice or manifest injustice. Judge Quigless ruled that the new evidence met all four requirements for such an order. It was discovered post-trial. The defense was not at fault for not knowing it earlier. It was likely to produce a different result in a new trial, and it was more than just cumulative or impeaching evidence. On March 11, 2015, following Judge Quigless's order, Schwartz filed the motion for a new trial. The motion specifically highlighted Pam's self-incriminating lies and the alleged pressure exerted by prosecuting attorney Leah Askey and Sergeant McCarrick on Pam to take actions that would bolster the state's case and enhance her credibility as a witness. Schwartz accused Askey of deliberate silence regarding Pam's alleged perjury about establishing the trust fund. In May 2015, Pam met with Leah Askey to discuss her anticipated testimony at the hearing for Russ's new trial. Their conversation focused on Pam's denial of ever promising Betsy to give the insurance money to her daughters, her claim of being pressured to set up the trust, and her subsequent revocation of the fund due to the daughters' criticism. Askey expressed confidence in her legal position, stating, "The law is on our side," and reaffirmed her belief in Russ's guilt. On June 5, 2015, a contentious hearing on the motion for a new trial was held. By the end of the day, Judge Stephen Omer granted the motion, overturning Russ Faria's conviction. Judge Omer concluded that the new evidence from Pam's testimony met the appellate court's requirements and demonstrated that Pam, as a person with opportunity or motive, had committed an act that directly connected her to the crime. This ruling rebutted Judge Menemeyer's earlier decision on the direct connection rule. Judge Omer scheduled the new trial for November 2, 2015. Around June 11th, 6 days after his conviction was overturned, Russ was transferred from state prison back to the Lincoln County Jail in Troy. On June 16, 2015, Russ's cousin Mary Anderson courageously posted her home as security for Russ's $500,000 bond and paid $17,000 in cash to a bail bondsman, securing Russ's release from jail. This marked the end of 3.5 years of incarceration. Russ began enjoying his freedom, started an IT job, and aimed to regain a sense of normalcy. The very next day, June 17, 2015, a new police interview with Pam Hupp took place that would reveal yet another shocking claim. During this interview, Pam alleged that she and Betsy Faria had been lovers, and that Russ was enraged upon discovering this relationship, leading to a violent threat against her at Betsy's house shortly before the murder. Later in the same interview, Detective Patrick Harney inappropriately suggested to Pam a theory that Russ had arrived at the house after she and Betsy left, attempting to get her to change her sworn testimony and implicate Russ further. This latest claim represented another dramatic shift in Pam's narrative. On October 1, 2015, Judge Stephen Omer held a hearing on pretrial motions in anticipation of Russ Faria's second trial. Joel Schwartz made what many considered a risky decision to present evidence and arguments implicating Pam Hupp as a legitimate suspect in Betsy Faria's murder. Almost every colleague and friend warned against this strategy, calling it crazy, but Russ agreed with Schwartz's explanation, saying, "Let's do it." Judge Omer had consistently made decisions that were correct on the law and unfailingly fair, particularly his ruling that Schwartz could present evidence and argument that Pam Hupp was a legitimate suspect. He denied Leah Askey's motion for reconsideration of this ruling, despite Askey's argument that there was no direct connection between Hupp and the murder. Schwartz successfully countered that there was ample evidence of a direct link. The animosity between Schwartz and Askey continued, leading Judge Omer to admonish them multiple times and even jokingly ask if he would have to put them in the corner. On October 6, 2015, Pam Hupp gave another police interview to Detective Harney and Detective Harry Belcher. During this session, she made a dramatic claim of a recovered memory. She now remembered seeing Russ and another man in a car parked near the Faria house when she and Betsy arrived on the night of the murder. She also claimed she saw Russ still in the car, ducking his head when she left later. She attributed these huge lapses of memory to head injuries from 3 car accidents and regular doses of Ambien, the same drug found in her mother's system. On November 1st, 2015, Joel Schwartz and Nate Swanson arrived at their hotel near the Lincoln County Courthouse for final preparations. Schwartz found a fortune cookie that read, "All of your hard work will soon be rewarded," which they took as a good omen. The second trial commenced on November 2nd, 2015. Leah Askey presented what she called a new piece of evidence. Sergeant Mike Pirtle of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office testified that he saw water droplets in Russ Faria's shower during a preliminary search on the night of the murder. This information had never been reported in nearly 4 years of investigation or mentioned in the first trial. Pirtle admitted he only discovered it wasn't documented a few months before this trial. Schwartz vehemently challenged this new testimony, noting its absence from all previous documentation. Judge Omer, in a rare move, questioned Pirtle directly for more details. In her opening statement, Askey did not mention Pam Hupp by name, referring only to a friend who drove Betsy home. She introduced a new attack on the game night players, accusing them of initially lying about playing a board game before watching movies, then changing their story in second interviews. She also made new, unproven allegations about Russ having a mistress who was pregnant with his child when Betsy died, which Schwartz refuted as largely false. Schwartz's opening statement immediately centered on Pam Hupp as the only person who knew about a recently discovered letter supposedly written by Betsy. He highlighted that Pam became the beneficiary to Betsy's $150,000 policy only 4 days before the murder, contrasting it with Russ being the beneficiary for over a decade. He criticized the lack of investigation into Pam's whereabouts, noting no attempts were made to corroborate her story with her husband, neighbors, or cell tower data. The day's witnesses included Mariah and Leah Day, who reiterated their prior testimony about Russ and Betsy's rocky relationship. Pamela Welker, Betsy's sister, testified that Pam Hupp surprisingly told Betsy's family after the murder that she was the new beneficiary and would give the money to the daughters. Mary Rogers, Betsy's oldest sister, described the 2004 incident where Russ allegedly threatened to cut her up and bury her. Under redirect examination, she revealed that Betsy had an affair with Mary's husband, and Russ knew about it and was furious, providing Askey with another potential motive. Amy Butner, the crime scene investigator, testified that her search found no water droplets or evidence of recent shower use. Drains were dry, and no attempt to clean up was evident. She confirmed that the bloody slippers appeared swiped in blood, not stepped in, and there were no bloody footprints. She stated it would be impossible for the assailant not to have blood on them at such a bloody crime scene. On November 3rd, Detective Mike Merkel testified, describing Russ's grief as over-the-top, exaggerated, and put on, especially when alone, implying he was faking it. However, Schwartz produced 132 photos from January 3, 2012, showing positive indications of blood during Blue Star tests, contradicting Merkel's previous testimony in the first trial that they showed absolutely nothing. Merkel admitted his earlier testimony was incorrect. Major Ray Floyd testified, admitting that by the time he interviewed Russ, the major case squad had already concluded Russ was the killer. He said his job was merely to follow the leads I was assigned, justifying the lack of investigation into Pam Hupp. On November 4th, Sergeant Ryan McCarrick testified for the first time in a trial involving Russ Faria. He stated that Pam Hupp showed no signs of deception and there was no reason to investigate her further, despite her numerous contradictions. McCarrick admitted he repeatedly urged Pam to set up a trust for Betsy's daughters before the first trial because it would look good for the prosecution. He confirmed he never checked Pam's cell tower records or spoke to her husband or neighbors to confirm her alibi. Lauren Manganelli, the librarian, testified that Betsy Faria had asked her to witness a beneficiary form, stating she was changing her beneficiary because she was getting a divorce and wanted her children to be on the form someday. Rita Wolf, Betsy's friend, testified that Detective McCarrick had lied when he claimed he never spoke to her about not pressuring Betsy's family to sue Pam for the insurance money before Russ's first trial. Rita insisted McCarrick had urged her to lay off the family about suing Pam until after the trial. Detective Robert O'Neill testified about finding the P-Doc letter on Betsy's laptop. His analysis showed it was created on December 22, 2011, using Word 97, though Betsy's computer had Word 2003, and was saved while connected to a Wi-Fi network called The Club, consistent with Pam's story about being at the tennis club. He could not verify its origin, author, or truthfulness. On November 5th, Detective Sergeant Patrick Harney testified that Pam Hupp's claim of a sexual relationship with Betsy Faria and Russ's alleged threats against Pam were first made in June 2015, 3.5 years after the murder. Harney admitted he had suggested to Pam the theory that Russ arrived at the house and motivated her to leave, an act Schwartz considered coaching a witness. On November 6th, the final day of trial, Pam Hupp's bank records were introduced as evidence, showing she opened a revocable trust for Betsy's daughters with $100,000 just 4 days before Russ's first trial, then withdrew all but $300 and revoked the trust 3 weeks after Russ's conviction. Computer analyst Greg Chatton confirmed that Pam's cell phone was in the same cell tower sector as Betsy's house when she made calls at 7:04 p.m. and 7:27 p.m., contradicting her varied accounts of her location. He also testified that the P-Doc letter could not have been created on Betsy's laptop. The game night players reaffirmed Russ's alibi, disputing Askey's claims about them playing a board game or participating in violent roleplay. Marshal Bach testified that detectives had offered him immunity if he changed his testimony. In closing arguments, Askey quoted the P-Doc letter extensively, treating it as Betsy's dying declaration, while Schwartz countered with arguments about the overwhelming alibi evidence for Russ, Pam's financial motive and opportunity, and the questionable police investigation. During her rebuttal, Askey again violated the judge's order against discussing alternate suspects, drawing a sustained objection from Schwartz. Judge Stephen Omer delivered his verdict, stating that the law enforcement investigation was rather disturbing and frankly raises more questions than answers. Russ Faria was acquitted on all charges. After the acquittal, Schwartz immediately called U.S. Attorney Richard Callahan, urging a review of the Faria case and Pam Hupp's mother's death, warning, "Someone else is going to die if Hupp was not stopped." Quick break. Ads keep the show running, but if you want to skip them, the ad-free version's on Patreon for just $3 a month. Links in the show notes. And we're back. Thanks for sticking through that. Let's get back to it. In early 2016, Russ Faria began the slow process of rebuilding his life. After years of legal battles, he was finally able to collect on 2 of Betsy's life insurance policies that had been frozen during the court proceedings. With this money, he purchased a mobile home and began renovating it, creating a new space for himself. He also secured work, taking on an IT job that allowed him to telecommute with a friend's business based in Phoenix, Arizona. However, the fight over Betsy's insurance money was far from over. In January 2016, the civil lawsuit brought by Betsy's daughters, Leah and Mariah Day, to recover the $150,000 insurance payout from Pam Hupp went to trial in St. Charles County Circuit Court before Judge Ted House. The Day's attorney, David Butch, argued that Pam Hupp had committed constructive fraud and benefited from unjust enrichment by keeping money that was rightfully intended for Betsy's daughters. Pam Hupp's testimony during this civil trial was revealing. She provided contradictory answers and offered explanations that made little sense. When questioned about telling police that Betsy wanted her to give the money to the daughters, Pam claimed she couldn't remember making such statements. When asked about her previous comment that she would only consider giving the money if the daughters' behavior improved, she again claimed memory problems. She insisted that the money sitting in her personal bank account was simply her money. Under cross-examination, Pam admitted to lying to Betsy's sister about giving away the money. When asked why she had lied, she responded that she lied to anybody that would bug me and bug me and bug me and bug me. She frequently cited memory problems as an explanation for her inconsistent statements. Most surprisingly, for the first time, Pam claimed she had been in a sexual relationship with Betsy Faria, something she had never mentioned to police before Russ's first trial. During one particularly confusing line of questioning, Pam became visibly flustered, waving her arm and repeatedly saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." The performance was so unconvincing that even Pam Hupp's own lawyer refused to vouch for her credibility during closing arguments, stating bluntly, "She's not a credible witness." As Pam left the courthouse after her testimony, she noticed a Dateline NBC camera crew. With a smile, she looked directly into the camera and said, "Say hi to Kathy," referring to the show's producer, Kathy Singer. Despite the contradictory testimony and admitted lies, Judge Ted House issued his verdict in February 2016, allowing Pam Hupp to keep Betsy's insurance money. The judge found there was insufficient evidence to determine Betsy's specific intent for the funds. He noted that if Betsy had wanted the money to go to her daughters, she could have specified this on the beneficiary form, but had not done so. His conclusion was that Betsy left it up to Pam Hupp. David Butch appealed this decision, but the appellate court ultimately upheld Judge House's verdict. Meanwhile, Russ Faria's legal team wasn't finished fighting. In April 2016, Joel Schwartz filed a lawsuit against State Farm Insurance in St. Charles County Circuit Court, challenging the validity of the beneficiary change altogether. Schwartz alleged that the form was incomplete, had been received after Betsy's death, and that State Farm's investigation into the matter had been inadequate. 3 months later, in July 2016, Schwartz and attorney Bevis Schock escalated their legal strategy significantly. They filed an 82-page federal lawsuit against Lincoln County prosecuting attorney Leah Askey Cheney and sheriff's detectives Ryan McCarrick, Mike Merkel, and Patrick Harney. The comprehensive lawsuit alleged that these officials had fabricated evidence, ignored exonerating evidence, and failed to investigate the obvious suspect, as part of a conspiracy to wrongly convict Russ Faria. The federal suit charged that their actions had violated Russ's civil rights and liberty without due process, contrary to both the Fourth and 14th Amendments. The lawsuit detailed numerous acts of misconduct, including prohibiting DNA testing of crucial evidence, coaching witnesses to change their testimony, conducting what amounted to a fake polygraph examination on Russ, and deliberately mischaracterizing the results of luminol testing. The suit argued that the evidence had never established probable cause for Russ's arrest and subsequent trial. As summer progressed, events would take a dramatic and deadly turn that would vindicate much of what Russ's legal team had been arguing. On August 10, 2016, Carol McAfee made a report to police about a suspicious encounter. She described how a woman in a gray SUV had approached her, offering $1,000 to participate in what was described as a reenactment for Dateline NBC. The woman had provided specific instructions for Carol to make a fake 911 call, telling her to yell phrases that would suggest a staged kidnapping scenario. Carol was later able to identify Pam Hupp from a photo lineup as the woman who had approached her. Surveillance footage confirmed that Pam Hupp's vehicle had been seen passing by the home of Russ Faria's parents around the same time. 6 days later, on August 16, 2016, at 12:06 in the afternoon, Pam Hupp called 911 to report a break-in at her O'Fallon home. During the call, a muffled male voice could be heard saying something that sounded like "what we did to your wife." Pam told the responding officers that a man had jumped into her car, pressed a knife to her throat, and demanded she drive him to her bank to get Russ's money. Throughout her interview with police, she repeatedly and emphatically denied knowing anyone named Russ. The man Pam had shot was identified as Louis Royce Gumpenberger. Detective Kevin Mountain, one of the responding officers, noted that Pam appeared remarkably composed for someone who had just been through what she claimed was a terrifying ordeal and had killed a man in self-defense. He found her 911 call seemed staged, almost scripted. When investigators searched Gumpenberger's body, they found a handwritten note in his pocket that would prove crucial to understanding what had really happened. The note contained detailed instructions for kidnapping, robbing, and murdering Pam Hupp. The language and methodology described in the note bore a striking resemblance to the manner in which Betsy Faria had been killed, including the specific instruction to make sure knife is sticking out of neck, complete with the misspelling of knife. The note also instructed that any money obtained should be left at the address of Russ Faria's parents. As police investigated further, they uncovered information about Louis Gumpenberger that completely contradicted Pam Hupp's account of events. Gumpenberger had suffered a severe traumatic brain injury in a car crash in 2005, which had left him with the mental capacity of a 12-year-old child. His physical limitations were equally significant. He was unable to run, couldn't drive a car, and didn't know how to use a computer. These disabilities made it impossible for him to have carried out the sophisticated plan that Pam described. Cell phone records revealed the truth of what had likely occurred. The data showed that Pam Hupp's phone had been active in the parking lot of Gumpenberger's apartment complex for approximately 4 minutes, shortly before the shooting at her home. This evidence suggested that rather than being a random attack, Pam had gone to Gumpenberger's residence, picked him up, and driven him to her house, where she shot him. Investigators concluded that Pam Hupp had been trolling the area for at least a week, looking for a vulnerable person she could manipulate into serving as a victim in her scheme to frame Russ Faria for another violent crime. As part of their investigation, O'Fallon police interviewed Russ Faria and requested alibi information, handwriting samples, DNA, and fingerprints. After reviewing all the evidence, police quickly concluded there was no connection whatsoever between Russ Faria and Louis Gumpenberger or his death. On August 23, 2016, St. Charles County prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar announced his decision to charge Pam Hupp with first-degree murder and armed criminal action for the death of Louis Gumpenberger. On the day of her arrest, Pam attempted to leave her home, but was stopped by officers and taken into custody. At the police station, Pam's behavior became increasingly erratic. While in a bathroom, she stabbed herself repeatedly in the wrists and neck using a ballpoint pen. Surveillance video from the station later showed that she had concealed the pen earlier, suggesting this act of self-harm was premeditated rather than a spontaneous breakdown. A search warrant executed at the home of Pam's son Travis revealed suspicious financial activity. Investigators found evidence of a deposit exceeding $122,000 and a notarized document from H2 Partners LLC, a company owned by Pam and her husband Mark Hupp, describing the money as a loan to Travis. When questioned, Travis claimed his mother had given him this money on August 20th to protect family assets from being frozen by the courts. On August 25th, police attempted to obtain fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting samples from Mark Hupp. He declined to cooperate, stating, "Russ Faria's friends never gave samples, so I don't think I'm going to give samples." After this interaction, Mark Hupp ceased all communication with law enforcement. Pam Hupp's booking photo from August 25th at St. Charles County Jail became notorious among those following the case. The image showed her with disheveled hair and thick bandages around her neck from her self-inflicted injuries. This photograph, which some dubbed the maxi pad shot due to the appearance of the bandages, became an enduring symbol of her downfall. In response to these developments, both Russ Faria and Joel Schwartz made public statements arguing that if Lincoln County authorities had properly investigated Betsy's murder from the beginning, Pam Hupp would have been charged in that case and would not have been free to kill Louis Gumpenberger. Leah Askey Cheney, the Lincoln County prosecutor, issued a statement confirming that her office had been cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office in a review of the Betsy Faria murder case. Searches of Pam Hupp's vehicle revealed telling evidence about her state of mind and activities. Police found Betsy Faria's death certificate, transcripts of Pam's own testimony from previous proceedings, various bank statements, records related to another woman named Shirley Newman, and a note regarding Mark Hupp's extramarital affair. On September 1st, police executed another search warrant at the Hupp residence. When no one responded to their knocks, officers broke down the front door. Inside, they discovered a small safe, but it contained only a tube of KY Intense gel, hardly the treasure trove of evidence they might have expected. St. Charles County Prosecuting Attorney Tim Lomar announced that if Pam Hupp was convicted of Louis Gumpenberger's murder, his office would seek the death penalty, citing the depravity of mind demonstrated by her actions. As 2016 drew to a close, there were positive developments in Russ Faria's personal life. He had fallen in love with Carol McAfee, the woman who had helped expose Pam Hupp's attempt to stage another crime, and the couple was preparing to move in together. Additionally, State Farm Insurance reached a settlement with Russ regarding his lawsuit over the beneficiary change, agreeing to pay him an undisclosed sum. The year 2016 had begun with Russ Faria trying to rebuild his life after years of wrongful prosecution. It ended with the person many believed was truly responsible for his wife's murder finally behind bars, charged with killing an innocent, disabled man in a twisted scheme to frame Russ for yet another crime he didn't commit. Quick break. Ads keep the show running, but if you want to skip them, the ad-free version's on Patreon for just $3 a month. Links in the show notes. And we're back. Thanks for sticking through that. Let's get back to it. In January 2017, Circuit Judge Christina Menemeyer received a 6-month unpaid suspension. The Missouri Commission on Retirement, Removal, and Discipline had recommended this action, and the Missouri Supreme Court justices unanimously imposed it. The suspension was based on allegations of mishandling cases both as a private attorney and as a sitting judge, though importantly, none of these allegations involved the Faria case. The Supreme Court found that Menemeyer had intentionally delayed cases involving 8 defendants during a dispute with public defenders. The 2018 primary elections brought significant changes to Lincoln County's legal landscape. Prosecuting attorney Leah Askey, who had changed her name to Leah Womack Cheney and switched her political party affiliation from Democrat to Republican, faced challenger Mike Wood in the Republican primary. Meanwhile, Judge Christina Menemeyer sought re-election in the Republican primary for circuit judge, but placed a disappointing third in a 3-way race, securing only 21% of the vote. Her prior suspension had become a major campaign issue, with many voters incorrectly assuming it was connected to her handling of the Faria case. Mike Wood decisively defeated Leah Cheney in the Republican primary for prosecuting attorney, securing nearly 3/4 of the vote after what had been described as a bitter campaign. In the November 2018 general election, Patrick Flynn won the Republican primary for circuit judge and went on to defeat the Democratic candidate. Mike Wood took office as Lincoln County prosecuting attorney unopposed, as no Democrat had sought the position. Leah Cheney returned to private practice. By early spring 2019, developments were occurring in Pam Hupp's case for the murder of Louis Gumpenberger. St. Charles County prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar proposed a plea bargain to Hupp's attorneys. He offered a life sentence without the possibility of parole if she pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, effectively dropping his office's demand for the death penalty. Louis Gumpenberger's mother, Margaret Birch, agreed to this proposed arrangement. On June 19, 2019, Pam Hupp accepted an Alford plea for first-degree murder in the death of Louis Gumpenberger. Under an Alford plea, a defendant does not admit guilt but acknowledges that the prosecution possesses sufficient evidence to secure a conviction at trial. The plea hearing generated significant public interest and had to be moved to a larger courtroom to accommodate the 100 spectators who attended. Among those present were Russ Faria, his family and friends, attorney Joel Schwartz, investigator Nate Swanson, and Louis Gumpenberger's mother, Margaret Birch. Notably absent were any members of Pam Hupp's family. Following the plea hearing, prosecuting attorney Tim Lomar held a press conference where he praised the O'Fallon police investigation as brilliant and described the evidence against Hupp as overwhelming. Lomar made a significant public statement, declaring that Pam Hupp was linked to 3 separate deaths: Betsy Faria, Shirley Newman, and Louis Gumpenberger. He assured the public that Hupp would never spend another day of her life outside a prison cell. Importantly, Lomar explicitly stated that Russ Faria had absolutely nothing to do with the Gumpenberger murder plot. Russ Faria expressed relief at Hupp's guilty plea, but also disappointment that she had not confessed to his wife Betsy's murder. This development prompted Lincoln County prosecuting attorney Mike Wood to officially reopen the investigation into Betsy Faria's murder. Wood retrieved 7 boxes of evidence from the original case and assembled a new major case squad team to conduct a fresh investigation. In August 2019, Pam Hupp began serving her sentence in Missouri State Prison. On August 12th, Judge Cunningham formally sentenced her for Louis Gumpenberger's murder. During the sentencing hearing, Hupp appeared in an orange jail uniform and was observed giggling and joking with her defense team before proceedings began. Carol McAfee, who was now in a relationship with Russ Faria, was present in the courtroom. September 27, 2019, marked another significant milestone in the case's public profile. Dateline NBC premiered a 2-hour episode titled The Thing About Pam, which was the 5th Dateline episode covering the Faria-Hupp case. The episode became one of their highest-rated programs, focusing on Betsy's murder, Russ's prosecution, and Pam Hupp's attempt to frame Russ in the Gumpenberger murder. Accompanying the television episode was a 6-part podcast of the same name, which debuted as the highest-rated podcast in the country that month. Also in 2019, a judge dismissed former prosecuting attorney Leah Womack Cheney in Lincoln County as parties to Russ Faria's federal lawsuit. The dismissal was based on their sovereign immunity for actions committed as part of their official duties. March 2020 brought a significant resolution to one aspect of Russ Faria's legal battles. The insurance company representing detectives Ryan McCarrick, Mike Merkel, and Patrick Harney agreed to pay Russ just over $2 million in settlement of his federal lawsuit. The settlement did not include any admission of wrongdoing by the detectives. Joel Schwartz acknowledged that while the money was significant, it could never truly repay Russ for his losses, but the settlement represented recognition of the wrongs he had suffered. In May 2020, NBC announced that The Thing About Pam podcast would be developed into a 6-part scripted television series. Academy Award winner Renee Zellweger was later cast to portray Pam Hupp in the production. July 2020 saw another legal victory for the victims of Pam Hupp's crimes. A St. Charles Circuit Court judge ordered Hupp to pay $3 million in damages to Margaret Birch in a wrongful death lawsuit over the murder of her son, Louis Gumpenberger. This judgment was specifically designed to prevent Hupp from profiting from her story through any future media deals. In September 2020, Pam Hupp attempted to withdraw her guilty plea for the Gumpenberger murder, claiming that her defense attorneys had pressured her into accepting the plea agreement. This legal maneuver would prove unsuccessful. October 2020 brought personal changes for Pam Hupp when her husband, Mark A. Hupp, filed for divorce in St. Charles County Circuit Court. Mark cited their separation since her August 2016 arrest and stated that their 26-year marriage had suffered an irretrievable breakdown. The judgment of dissolution of marriage was entered on November 12, 2020, finalizing the divorce. According to an insider, Pam was furious about the divorce, and Mark reportedly remarried within weeks of the finalization. In February 2021, Judge Cunningham denied Pam Hupp's petition to withdraw her guilty plea, ensuring that her conviction for Louis Gumpenberger's murder would stand. The most significant development came on July 12, 2021. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office filed a new document in circuit court that stated it was clear that Russ Faria was not involved in his wife's death. More importantly, the document established probable cause to charge Pamela Hupp with the first-degree murder of Betsy Faria. Based on this new evidence, Lincoln County prosecuting attorney Mike Wood formally charged Pam Hupp with first-degree murder and armed criminal action for Betsy Faria's death. Wood announced that he would seek the death penalty against Hupp. He cited greed as her primary motive and described her actions as demonstrating heinousness and depravity. Wood detailed how Hupp had mutilated Betsy's body, staged the crime scene, and later murdered Louis Gumpenberger in an attempt to avoid suspicion falling on her for Betsy's death. During his announcement, Wood revealed several crucial findings from the new investigation. He disclosed that there would be an investigation into possible criminal misconduct by the police and prosecutors involved in the initial investigation of Betsy Faria's murder. Wood stated that the new investigation had largely corroborated the civil rights allegations made in Russ Faria's federal lawsuit. Perhaps most damning, Wood revealed that 3 independent sources had come forward, claiming they were asked to lie on the witness stand by the prosecutor in that case. The new investigation had also determined that the blood pattern found on the bedroom light switch plate had resulted from the killer wearing Betsy's socks on their hands during the murder. Russ Faria was present at Wood's announcement and expressed his gratitude to the new prosecutor. He vowed to testify against Hupp and supported the decision to seek the death penalty. Russ stated his hope for justice against those he believed had conducted an incompetent and corrupt investigation that had wrongly targeted him. Joel Schwartz and Nate Swanson were also present, with both men noting that justice for Betsy and Russ Faria finally was within sight. The announcement prompted a defensive response from Leah Askey Cheney, who publicly denied any improper, unethical, or illegal conduct during Russ Faria's prosecution. She accused Wood of character assassination and expressed regret for ever running for prosecutor. In what appeared to be a moment of candor, Cheney called winning the conviction against Russ in the first trial the worst thing that ever happened to her. Joel Schwartz rejected Cheney's claims and characterized her expressions of regret as remarkable admissions of a job badly done. On July 27, 2021, Pam Hupp made her first court appearance for Betsy Faria's murder charge. She entered a plea of not guilty to the charges. Throughout the hearing, Hupp remained silent and did not look at the crowd of spectators, which included members of Russ Faria's family as well as Betsy's daughters and sisters. The legal proceedings that followed would prove to be drawn out and complicated by various delays and procedural issues. On September 8, 2021, the armed criminal action charge against Hupp was dismissed, leaving only the first-degree murder charge. A preliminary hearing was initially scheduled for February 2022, but had to be delayed indefinitely after Hupp's public defender died of a heart attack. In August 2022, Hupp waived her right to a preliminary hearing altogether. In October 2022, recognizing the extensive publicity surrounding the case, the court moved the venue of Hupp's trial to Greene County, Missouri, to ensure access to an impartial jury pool. The case was transferred to the 31st Judicial Circuit. However, by October 2023, the Lincoln County Prosecutor's Office announced it would refile the case and petition for a venue closer to St. Louis for logistical reasons. The prosecutor's office indicated that it expected the trial to take place in summer 2025 and estimated it would last approximately 1 month. In February 2024, Prosecutor Mike Wood filed a motion with the Lincoln County Circuit Court, formally declaring the state's intention to pursue the death penalty. Wood cited the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder was outrageously or wantonly vile, horrible, or inhumane in that it involved depravity of the mind as justification for seeking capital punishment. When the case was refiled in March 2024, Pam Hupp once again entered a plea of not guilty to the charges. At a hearing in September 2024, her public defender successfully requested that all DNA-related evidence held by prosecutors be provided to the defense team for examination. In January 2025, the trial was formally scheduled for August 3, 2026, to take place in St. Charles. Prosecutor Wood made it clear that unlike the previous case involving Louis Gumpenberger's murder, he would not accept an Alford plea from Hupp. After more than a decade of legal battles, wrongful convictions, appeals, and mounting evidence, the case that began with Betsy Faria's brutal murder on December 27, 2011, continues to work its way through the courts. Russ Faria, who spent 4 years fighting to clear his name and prove his innocence, now awaits the trial of the woman prosecutors believe was responsible for his wife's death all along. The wheels of justice, though often slow, continue to turn toward what many hope will finally be accountability for Betsy Faria's murder.